Welcome to the Port Huron Sports Statement. We got to do this because I'm behind on. I've been sick, and there are a lot of things I want to mention about sports. Number one, Devin Neal. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I thought he did such an outstanding job in the game against the Colorado Buffalo, and but he was all class, man. Devin Neal's all class. That's all I have to say about that. There's no slight on Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. I mean, they killed it. But, especially because the influence of Travis Hunter on defense becomes, I feel like, less when you are a run-dominant offense. Just because the free running and sort of athletic element is minimized. Plus, just you can't, the penetrating block element, and just if you have good blocking structures, although you can make some tackles certainly, and the athleticism is going to be an advantage. But I feel like that the foil for the Colorado Buffaloes was a between the tackles, well-executed run game. I mean, I don't know. I just thought also Devin Neal's, everything that he did during the game and then afterwards, I mean, seemed very legit, and I wanted to point that out. Alright, so Red Wings have had ups and downs, Talbot's been amazing. Really, the goaltending's been great for a couple of years, and that's been kind of that's been a thing to be noted. What else? There are a lot of things, but there's number one thing I want to talk about, so I'm trying to get through. Indiana, that game was way closer than everyone's pretending like it was. You have two special teams touchdowns that should have... Okay. Let's say they get one of them instead of both when the one doesn't slip through his hands, right? It changes the game completely because then, it doesn't free up the Ohio State defense to start experimenting with their blitz packages and then discover the left tackle vulnerability, in Indiana. It seems like that left tackle ended up getting beat a lot, around the edge. And I just don't see that getting exploited as early in the game if they don't have that 14-point cushion that Indiana gave them out of mistakes. I also didn't think it was very classy for them to score that last touchdown, but I understand why they did it, because they wanted to make sure the score didn't reflect how close the game actually was. I mean, that being said, once, they start exploiting this left tackle, these blitz packages, they're not able to, I get that, but I just don't see them moving to that as quickly if they don't get the lead, and not only that, but this gives them the confidence and momentum thing, but then there's this, the preference for passing, and it just changes the way that you're playing as well. So, play action isn't going to work as well when you start to, get higher and higher deficits and everything. I mean, I think that Ohio State is, I hate saying it, a better football team, but not by that much at all. By a 7 to 10 point margin, I think. But that's, beside the point. Again, the real point that I want to make, the reason that I'm talking about sports right now, the primary thing is, it's going around that the Tigers are likely going to sign, I hope this isn't true, not that I actually like the fit for the team, except for, and I'll explain all this very clearly, but, so the word on the street is, and this is very new, we're kind of breaking something here, 12, 14 hours late, but still, yeah, what's his name, Pete Alonso, $130 million total contract. Now, I didn't look into how many years that would be. How many years could it be? 5? Yeah, 5, probably. Yeah, thinking. Here's the problem with that. All right. The Tigers have no hierarchy whatsoever. They all make the same amount of money right now, except for Javi. And when did they start performing? When Javi was out of the locker room. You're just going to add another Javi. And the problem is, though, is that Pete Alonso is good, but he's not 130 times better than the rest of the players. Instead of spending $130 million on Pete Alonso, spend $130 million on the excellent team that you have now. Secure them for 10 years. You could secure that whole team for 10 years. And for the 5 or 10 flops that you get, the risk to reward, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Now, this is the idea, from what I hear, is they're going to get Pete Alonso, and then they're going to, quote, move off of Torkelson. And I get the logic there. But here's the problem with it is, you're going to have the gain of Pete Alonso is going to come at the cost of the camaraderie of the team, and maybe it can stay in place, but I don't think it's worth the risk. Like, you need to pay the players that were on the Tigers that made it as far as they made it, despite being expected to be, we were supposed to be anticipating a 500 team, and if it was better than that, we should have been happy. And I mean, I walked around and told everyone to bet that the Tigers would do better than they were expected to win 78, I think. 78 was the projection before season. And that was the projection even after spring training was like 500 and whatever. My thing was the AL Central. I knew the AL Central was going to be better than everyone expected, except for the Twins and the White Sox. And I said this to a lot of people. And I don't think I need anyone to back me up. Like, I've been thinking too about, like, I want to get into improving people's bet systeming, because the American public is losing so much money in bets, and because of that, the way that the casino and sports books are manipulating the way they offer bets is more insidious and more profitable. But if the American public started betting better, it would force them into making it better for everyone. Like, it's still wildly profitable. They should be working off of, like, a bet total and bet margin, moving point line, money line. All these things should be predicated on the volume and total and money of bets. That's a way that you could mathematically hedge all of these sports books so that they can't lose if you do it just purely on the monetary value, and then you just take a rake. Like, but how they're doing it now is to game it more, where there's actually more risk but a lot more reward. But the problem is too that they're ultimately sucking a lot of money out of the middle class's hands, and they're doing it in deceitful ways. But also they're taking bigger and bigger rakes, and, like, I don't know. Like, for example, they're manipulating to the psychology of fandom a lot. Like, Russell Wilson, his number was 1.5 touchdowns for that game in Cleveland in the snow. And why was 1.5 touchdowns the Russell Wilson number? Because most of the bets on the over were coming from Yinzers, right? And then they kind of like people that were really into the Steelers. No one would make that bet outside of those people. And so, like, the way that the sports books and the AIs are working now is they're really heavily exploiting the betting population against itself in a way that wouldn't happen if the general sports fan was a little bit smarter about the way they bet. But well, that's what this is probably going to become. That's what I guess I realized what this show is essentially going to become. Is going to become mostly about talking about different betting concepts through actual betting opportunities, So I should actually. All right, I will post this. Now here's what it is. But actually, first let's talk about Pete Alonso, though. Again, a little bit more. Pete Alonso, you want to have that. You want to have the. We kind of need. We do a little bit need the home runs, kind of. Especially the timely ones. And Torkelson's timely hitting it doesn't exist. And that's been a problem for the entire time. Even when he was hitting well, his runners in scoring position numbers, and even where's like his bases loaded numbers, or like his late in game numbers, frankly, I mean, just all of it. He doesn't hit when you need him to. But I would argue that Torkelson should. I wish that he would have played better defense this year too, because his defense was really good the past 2 years. This year it wasn't that good, and then he also was bad at the chasing. If he just didn't chase, he's got more walks. It's like, oh my gosh. But regardless, I don't think the right move is to go to Pete Alonso, and just, unless you're going to start paying the players that played last year right. There are a lot of interesting free markets, or free agents, like a lot of them. And I think that you need to focus more on culture than you should on names. I think, what Scott Harris has done so far has been exactly what you should be doing with any type of enterprise for this, looking for value. And he's found outstanding value. Look for a situation more like Mark Canha, where you're going to get a player that's can get a similar productivity, but if they don't, you're not stuck in a long-term contract, and you're not going to jostle the hierarchicalness of the current Tigers team. You're not going to win more games next year by adding Pete Alonso. I mean, okay, there is a world where you win more games by adding Pete Alonso, but there's a world where you win far less games by adding Pete Alonso. The thing that you really captured in last year's season was utilizing players that really wanted to win together as well as they could be utilized. Now, if you could just insert Pete Alonso's stats into that, then they would have, that would have been great. If you could have his home runs, timely home runs, and then add it to the Tigers. But it doesn't work like that. I mean, you know, showing this team that you will reward that level of quality play and continue to reward the culture that was developed, you need to run with that. And I think Pete Alonso could fit it, but the problem is Pete Alonso is going to demand an amount of money that's going to naturally cause a hierarchy in the dugout that you should already know, if you're in the management at the Tigers, is not conducive to this young team. Baez was detrimental ultimately, and I think Baez's defense excuses his terrible, terrible free swinging habits and his, if it's down and away, I can hit it for sure. It doesn't matter if it's 60 feet away. And his, strangely enough, he'll occasionally hit him even off the ground. But I actually think I am one of the of people that pay attention. I am one of the biggest hobby supporters, but I'm going to tell you this. It's better that he was out. I think that because, maybe Pete Alonso can occupy that role better, and maybe that's what they need, is someone that they can look up to be aspirational. But why? They already did it. What? What? You could argue if Torkelson just hit some fucking home runs, or you could argue they overused certain elements of the bullpen, because the tactics have to change when you're playing the same opponent. And then it was a major disadvantage that they were playing an opponent that they already played so much. So, the bag of tricks, when you use them, I think though A.J. Hinch used the bullpen to an expert level throughout the whole season, I think that you could make some criticisms of his use of the bullpen in the Cleveland series. But regardless, it's just that I don't think that you could have changed the personnel much to get a better outcome within the budget that would be available. And even regardless, I guess there's a better, unless you're going to pay all the guys that deserve to be paid, and there are a ton of them. Vierling, for sure. Greene should be getting paid what you're talking about paying Pete Alonso, and it's a better investment. Give Greene that for 10 years. He'll take it. I bet you he takes $13 million for a year for 10. I bet take 130, 10 million. I bet he signs it. And what a smart deal. And oh gosh, he's such a good player, and he's such a high character player. Then we got Tarek SKUBAL. I mean, just give him that money. You're going to get more wins out of it. Don't let him go anywhere. That's more important. Like, whether it's next year or the year after that, like, you need to lock all these players up. Like, there's such a huge value. Even Torkelson's a value. He is. There's so many great, finally, the Verlander trade pays off with Jake Rogers, great catcher, and he is clutch. And we got these players all need to be paid before you pay Pete Alonso $130 million, I guess the point. And I haven't been keeping up much with what they've been doing, but I haven't been seeing anything that says that they paid any of these guys, and that's what really pissed me off. Like, how can you even think about paying Pete Alonso $130 million? I mean, if all these guys get, and I say all of them, even players that we don't see as much, like, I mean, McKinstry deserves a real contract for years. He's such a high utility value player, He can steal and all that stuff. His kind of like alter ego, Baez. Why wouldn't you give these guys 5 years, a couple $1 million? Why wouldn't you? They're so versatile. You're going to be able to trade them. It's like, in the worst case scenario, you got to lock all these guys up before you ever think about that. And there's the space there. What else, though? There's so many players. And, like, your worst case scenario, you're going to be able to trade them for more valuable assets because of how much of a utilitarian element there is to all these players. Locking them up for long-term deals is, before you spend $130 million on Pete Alonso, do that. It'll be better for the culture, for sure. And then you can talk about Pete Alonso. But you've got to sign all these guys first. It's so important. And if you don't, and this is like directly to Chris Ilitch, I've waited on you multiple times. We've talked. Listen to me again. I've given you great suggestions in wine, and you know this is true. Get those players indefinitely before you think about anything else. Scott Harris, you built a great team. Keep them. You'll be able to get them cheaply, and you'll have a great team for a decade. And I don't see how this isn't obvious. I don't see how it's not obvious. Anyway, okay, so then there's something. Oh, the sports betting. Oh yeah, I'll make a. All right, so I think I haven't looked at any of the numbers of the spreads or anything for the Michigan game, but we'll just go broadly. When you're gambling, what you're looking for is you want to find opportunities where the payout versus the likelihood of the outcome actually occurring represents value. So, if something's paying out at 6-1, it pays 6 times the initial bet, but you have information suggesting that the likelihood of it actually occurring is more like, a 1 in 3. So it's twice as likely as the payout. Those are the bets you want to be taking, and you can't. It's weird because I've developed models for my own gambling. Blah 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 blah. I've been doing my gambling. I had to pull out all of my gambling money and use it. So I don't have any money to play with right now, but my mock bets are doing outstanding. But I found too, though, one of the ways that I didn't maximize my betting before is the teams that seem to have the biggest edge against either the spread or the money line or whatever. When I'm like, well, that represents a value bet based on XYZ. Just because there are more reasons that represents a value bet, I've come to find out that it doesn't mean that it's better. I guess, like, some of the best examples of what I thought, like, all right, so I actually give you two of the most painful, actually. So, I thought the Lions last year at San Francisco represented a value at all the lines. And then I did win ultimately in that game, but barely, and I was so close to winning, you know, like $10,000. I mean, I think I ended up because I did play the spread now, but I also played the money line, and I think I ended up losing, yeah, but it wasn't like, it was like there's so many different ways that it would have come out big. But anyway, the really big one is the Jets versus the Avalanche last year in the NHL, because there were just so many of the metrics that I had come to use to predict the outcomes of the NHL that were suggesting like that was a great series to bet on. I mean, look into the way the Jets played the Avalanche last year, and I had ESPN Plus because I was betting so much, and I was watching the games, and not only were they beating them in system, but they were beating them in skill. I mean, and then Hollebuck was just playing so well. They just dominated the Avalanche, and then, I don't know, I guess the point is, though, that the best way to play these is to spread the bets across all of these value bets. Then you want to create combinations to, like, it's like if this is going to happen, that makes this other element more likely to happen. Like, if the Tigers are going to win today, they're going to need to get 7 innings out of SKUBAL, something like that. That's a good example of maybe not 7. I like to be conservative with these, but when you're playing money lines, I like to play money lines myself. Generally, there are a lot of different systems to exploit, and if we go way into how my system works, then you'll start to understand. I don't exclusively play money lines, though, but I will often stack money lines where it's like the money line payout negative 120, 150 or something. If it's negative 200, then I don't like to get into it, depending on the sport. But if I feel really good about the situation, regardless what it is, but I feel that, okay, if this win is going to happen, then, obviously you lose the bet if the win doesn't happen, but the win seems highly contingent upon, one thing in hockey is goalie saves, like, especially when they were letting you pick it, like, it'd be like, okay, well, especially the way the Red Wings were playing last year, they were allowing tons of shots, so you'd be like, well, if they're going to win it all, we're going to need at least 20 saves from, Alex Lyon, and that was a safe way to juice a money line, and, well, they stopped letting me do it. They started making it so you couldn't, because you kick that number down to a safe number, and then you'd be enhancing the payout by like 30 or 40%. And pretty much unless Alex Lyon got injured or by some miracle they got, a ton of power plays. I mean, because they just weren't playing effective defense. They were allowing a lot of shots last year. I mean, they still allow shots, but, I mean, it's just about looking for opportunities where you're going to increase the payout without increasing the risk. Or obviously you're always going to in some way increase risk. I mean, there are all types of unforeseeables, and like I had called that Indiana would beat the spread against Ohio State, and I believe that would have happened if they didn't, the punts didn't result, the two special team errors essentially, that gave Ohio State 14 points, changed the entire course of the game. And if we give those points, they meet the spread, because the spread that I was trying to call for was 14.5. I ended up not publishing that video because I came to the conclusion that I don't want to make calls, and I'm glad I didn't, because it came out bad, even though I think the game more or less followed how I thought it was going to go. I was really disappointed in some of the blitz packages getting through so easily, though, on Indiana. I wasn't expecting it, especially after the first quarter. I was not expecting shit to go through like butter like that, and I think, they're just going to need to come up with better ways to protect on the left side, mostly. I did see some blitz going right up the gut, though, but those look like, those were kind of strange blitz packages. They probably didn't see. And I think that UofM started to use them in the third and fourth quarter in their game with Indiana, and it was effective. And that is, I'm thinking, a major problem with Indiana, but the discrepancy between those teams is not whatever it was it 28 points or something, or 23, or I don't know. It's so painful to watch. I'm glad I didn't make that call, though, but yep. So what was crap. I think that's the end of it. Oh, yeah, just want to look for... Michigan versus Ohio State. I actually think Michigan's like plus 20. And this is an example. Okay, so if you think it's going to be a high-scoring game, that makes it more likely that Michigan could lose by 20. If you don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, then it's very unlikely, like, you know what I mean? If it's going to be under 30, then you might as well play Michigan against the spread, because if there's going to be, I mean, unless you think it's going to be nearly a shutout, and then you'd want to be playing the under on Michigan points. You see how this, depending on the outcome that you're expecting, there's definitely a way to play this UofM Ohio State game and get a good value on your bet. I think Michigan will beat that spread. If I remember, I think it's like 19. I don't think UofM will win. I would love more than anything I would love more than anything that I could imagine happening tomorrow in sports that to happen. That would be one of the most amazingly awesome things. It would be awesome. It would be better than the national championship, to be honest with you. But for me, I would think it was hilarious, and I would just love it. I would love everything about that. But I think they will beat the spread. I think it's going to be, I don't know, I think actually Warren, because if he's finally going to play as a quarterback, but, you know, he could end up throwing a bunch of picks. It could it's all going to come down to whether or not Warren can throw the ball. If he can throw the ball, then they can get play action pass, their run game can come alive, and all these different things. And it shouldn't be a hosing, but they'll probably lose. If Warren starts throwing picks, then it's going to be a hosing. I mean, even really one early pick will change the trajectory of that game for the bad. Because what do you do as Huron more? Do you let him throw another pick? You kind of have to. But then as soon as he does, your game's over. Do you put another quarterback? I mean, who? You can't put in Orgy, because then they're going to know you're running, and then you're not going to be able to run. There needs to be a solid and real threat of a pass. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to beat Ohio State. You're not going to have any ground game, and obviously no pass game. So, yeah, it's really going to come down to whether Warren can complete passes. Can they protect him? I've been to a couple of UofM games. They've been protecting the quarterback. I mean, their lines look good. Their defense looks good. Quarterback play's been brutal. I'm sorry, and it's usually the offensive line, honestly, that's like causing the quarterback play to be bad. But it's the UofM should have been better. And if they can get good quarterback play against Ohio State, then they will beat that damn spread. If they get par for the course, what they've been getting, then there's a very good chance that the spread's beat, because pick six type shit. You know, if there's not a lot of turnovers for Michigan, or if Michigan's able to force turnovers, then I think they definitely beat the spread. If it ends up being a shootout, then you know, it's more likely the spread hits. So yeah, I mean, if you're expecting the spread to hit, then you should be looking at playing some over. Or if you think the spread's going to hit because Michigan's not going to be able to score, then you should be looking at playing the spread and playing an under on Michigan's total points. Yeah. Like, for example, if you think Michigan, let's say you want to play a Michigan money line because it's probably paying out craziness, then you should be looking at some other things. Like I'm saying, like, Warren's got to have a decent day for that to happen. He has to have a decent day for that to happen. So like an under 2 picks, I would say it has to be under 2 picks for them to win. You know, that would be a good safe one. I don't like to add legs that break your balls. I like to add safe legs because, you know, obviously if you're playing Michigan to win, it's already a Hail Mary, but it is possible.